Hello and welcome back to Blah Blah Comics, Blah Blah Curse Words. I remain Derek,
I'm still Colby.
and we are talking comics from Jonathan Hickman and Matt Fraction. That's right, this is, we need a cool sound effect
We
here,
do.
Comics Collision!
Dun dun dun!
Alright, well, sir, since you once again came up with the categories, the bouts as it were,
Yes.
I will let you start out.
Yeah, well, this one, I've been looking forward to this one. The first one we did, Alan Moore versus Frank Miller. I forgot for a second there. Those are definitely two heavyweights going at it, two the top of the charts, two of the all-time favorites going at it. To me, in my head, this is more like a backstreet just slobber knocker between two people that are rising in the ranks.
Yeah, this is, to put it in wrestling terms, this would be, what, Dolph Ziggler versus Ambrose.
That's a dude. Good job with the wrestling there.
Thank you.
This very much would be. These are two fan favorites that sometimes don't get their just desserts, but the fans still love them.
Right.
So, of course, if you don't know, we're doing Matt Fraction versus Jonathan Hickman, which I think will be awesome. You want to just jump into this?
Yeah, let's hit it. What is the first bout here, sir?
I'm going to go with the first one because even though currently they're doing a ton of creator-owned work, I would still argue what most people probably know them for is their Marvel work, and they're both have been instrumental the past decade or so in Marvel's, especially the past 4 years, in Marvel's current lineup. So I was first bout, who has even better work at Marvel?
And that is a great category to start out on because they've both done some really controversial stuff. They've had some really, really critically and fan acclaimed work. Fraction, most notably for Hawkeye. Hickman's Fantastic Four run was lauded and really brought people back to the Fantastic Four, so much so that they supported a second title for a while, which I think the last Fantastic Four title that was considered successful was the Thing solo series back in mid-1980s. But they've also had some real critical misfires. Speaking of Fantastic Four, Matt Fraction's FF work, well, his FF title was actually pretty well loved, but his core Fantastic Four title was not as well received. Fraction's Thor work was, and this one I can actually speak to from reading, quite abysmal.
This is not as, like I said, our first bout was two people that they had a steady part of the career where they were nothing but good and nothing but bad. These are two writers who pretty consistently do incredible work, but then just do some misguided and smaller work. But yeah, they hit high highs and they hit some lows.
Yeah, they've had some incredible misfires. I think Hickman's Shield ultimately was a notable failure. And then I know some people really adore his Secret Warriors. I kind of found it to be kind of a mess. A well-intentioned mess, but kind of a mess. So,
I think
if I had to pull the trigger on one, I would probably actually give it to Hickman on this side. I really feel his Fantastic Four work and his current work on Avengers, which, as we all know, is leading into Secret Wars, has been so influential on those characters and the Marvel Universe. As great as Hawkeye is, as great as Iron Fist was, honestly, Fraction's run on Iron Fist with Brubaker is one of my top 20 comics of the new millennium, period.
My biggest argument right now, because I agree for almost everything, but my biggest argument with Fraction, like you said with the Fantastic Four, they haven't supported a second title well since the 80s.
Right.
But I will say Fraction, for those two characters you named, he brought Iron Fist and Hawkeye into the best-selling list, which that is no easy feat.
That's true, and it really revitalized the street-level character at Marvel, much like Bendis on Daredevil, or the first half of Straczynski's run on Spider-Man, or even you could probably argue Dan Slott's run on Spider-Man.
Yeah, and that Fraction, I would say Hickman has done more important work to Marvel, but I do think the work Iron Fist by itself, I think, is possibly out of the two the best Marvel work that I've read. Now that's a close one though, because you said the whole time, Hickman's New Avengers has been. I have fallen in love with that series since it started.
Right.
And his fan, like I said, I've always said I'm not a huge Fantastic Four fan, but from all the Hickman Fantastic Four I've read, I really enjoyed.
And I'm a pretty dyed-in-the-wool FF fan. I've been on record before that I surprised myself at how much I actually enjoy that series and own way more Fantastic Four comics than I would have thought, and have read way more Fantastic Four continuity than I would have thought myself capable of. And yeah, Hickman's run is right up there with Mark Waid, John Byrne, and of course Lee and Kirby. So that's really where I'm coming from. I think I may actually be a little biased in this category as such a fan of the Fantastic Four. Having someone who enjoys... Oh, crap. You still on there?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Playing with my dog and I knocked my computer over.
Nice. But they both... I'll say Hickman... Honestly, Hickman has more work at Marvel that I would consider top-notch.
Right, and that's another thing that I would argue. Quantity... I do think Hickman pulls it out in the quantity of quality work section versus Fraction. As far as Marvel, and also I feel like with certain exceptions, and I think we can point both Hawkeye and Iron Fist as those exceptions, Fraction doesn't seem to feel comfortable writing mainstream superheroes. It definitely feels like something out of his wheelhouse. Yeah, whereas Hickman is plot-oriented enough that I feel like he can plug in, and that sounds like such a backhanded compliment, but it feels like he can plug in certain characters into the plots he's created to make these stories work. Personally, I have to give Marvel work to Hickman.
Okay. Did you ever read?
As much as I appreciate Matt Fraction, his contributions to the overarching Marvel universe, if we're going purely on Marvel work, I think Hickman pulls out the edge.
You know, I may have to agree with you on that one really quick. I personally not read it, so I cannot have a dog in this personal one. Did you read Fraction's Uncanny X-Men?
I did. It was not great.
Oh, okay. Iron Man. Wait, did you read his Iron Man?
His Iron Man was fantastic.
That's the other one.
His Iron Man was top notch. I think it kind of fell apart in the last act, the last third. But the first 2/3 were phenomenal. And like I say, once again, solo hero.
Yeah, true.
And I think this is actually going to come up much stronger in the last category.
Yeah.
You sent me.
I'll be honest. This was the whole purpose of that last category because they both handle. We'll get to that in a minute, but they both handle characters very different.
Right. So yeah, his. You're absolutely right. I did manage to blank on his Iron Man run, which was great. If I remember correctly, most of his X-Men run he co-wrote with Kieran Gillen, and I did not enjoy Kieran Gillen's X-Men work either. But yeah, Fractions. It was better than Brubaker. It was better than what had been going on the book. It was definitely a breath of fresh air after the 1-2 punch of late generation Claremont and Brubaker's Swing and Miss. But overall, compared to his other work, I would have to put Uncanny X-Men in the Miss category.
Okay, so I haven't read any of it, but I know I've heard people talk quite a bit about it, and I know it always comes up in a lot of his big Marvel works, but I think I do agree that because of how much more Hickman's put out with Marvel and the quality of most of his work, where I will say his failures at Marvel normally aren't as, sadly to put it, bad as Fraction's failures at Marvel.
Yeah, but I would definitely say that.
For that reason alone, I think we did have to give it to Hickman in the Marvel category for that reason alone, because, like you said, for when Fraction is firing all cylinders in Marvel, and when he has the solo characters, it goes far above and beyond. But that's, like you said, that's happened about 3 or 4 times where Iron Man, Iron Fist, Hawkeye, when it does happen, it's on. They're fantastic and incredible. But any other time, he's kind of, his Marvel work hasn't been not the top of the pile.
Right.
Okay. Well, to keep it on the same track, different rail. Whose independent work is better?
Now, see, this is one that I've been going back and forth on.
I have too.
Since we've talked about the list, because this is another one where they have such a dichotomy. They either put out the best comic you're reading this week, or it stinks. It's terrible. It's incoherent. It makes no
this one
sense.
I thought maybe especially hard for you because I think they have written both of your the books that you've been beyond obsessed with for the past few years. I would say East of West and Sex Criminals, the one that surprised you the most, come from both of them.
Yeah, and they're both incredible books that I adore and look forward to both when they both come out. But Hickman's done Secret, which was kind of a messy flop.
See, for me, this one I'm a bit biased because Fraction's done Casanova.
Right. And the thing is, I've actually been reading Matt Fraction since before I knew who Matt Fraction was. I read the annotated Mantooth graphic novel back in college, which was something he did for AIT Planet Lar, literally over a decade ago.
God. Yeah, Fraction's definitely, he's been bigger in the industry for a longer time. But.
Right. Yeah, Hickman's definitely made a splash, and there was, for a long time, I actually didn't like Jonathan Hickman. I thought his work was kind of a mess, kind of incoherent. I think he relied too much on his art design background to really try to sell his art and his stories that in a way that I really didn't enjoy or appreciate. I'm not a huge fan of Manhattan Projects. I understand why people are, but it's something, I've read the first couple of trades, and it's good, but it's not something that captured my imagination, not the way East of West did. And again, we're kind of encroaching on the fifth category by talking about this, because really the ultimate difference between these two creators is that Hickman is incredibly plot oriented in a way that I think works really well for his superhero work. Fraction is astonishing at character, and I think that's why Sex Criminals hits me as hard as it does, as consistently as it does, because I care about these characters and I care about their growth and development. And you can say that for pretty much any of Matt Fraction's works. I have not read a bunch of Casanova, but I have read a little bit of Casanova, and I loved the character of Casanova. I liked the charming asshole character that he's created. Now, having said that, could we argue that Matt Fraction is very good at writing charming assholes and little else? Maybe. I think the argument could be made there because, John in Sex Criminals, charming asshole. Casanova, charming asshole. Hawkeye, charming asshole.
Fair.
But I don't think that's just because he's got a type that he goes back to. I don't think that negates the idea that he is strong. He's strong at characterization.
And because, in an odd way, even though they are nice assholes you get along with, they're very different assholes in different regards.
That's true. Plus, John is definitely a manic depressive and deals with that in the pages of the comic very clearly and very soulfully.
Anyone who can handle manic depression in a book called Sex Criminals by itself deserves an award.
Agreed, yeah. It's definitely...
And, I've got to put this out here. Fraction, I'm going to be biased this one because I've been reading his independent work for years. I don't know. Like you said, I've been reading him before I knew it because a lot of the independent work that I look back on my shelf that I had, I didn't even realize was him. Stuff like 4-letter words, 5 Fists of Science. What else was... Some Satellite Sam I did enjoy.
I read the first issue of Satellite Sam. It felt way too much like a Howard Chaykin cover band, which is weird because Howard Chaykin's involved.
Oh, and I've got to talk about... I know you just finished reading it, but Odyssey, a book that I've been really loving here lately.
Yeah, that's another one where I talk a lot on the podcast about books that I don't read but I am glad exist. I'm not even sure I'm glad Odyssey exists, but it does have an audience, and I cannot begrudge its audience the book. True. But it's definitely not for me.
Okay, we'll take that one out of the fight for now.
Well, I did want to say, though, because, the most recent projects from both of these guys, you've got 2 issues of Odyssey on the shelf and 1 issue of Dying in the Dead, and as much as I do love Dying in the Dead and found it to be an incredibly strong issue, I feel like it's dealing with a lot of very similar characters and themes to East of West, whereas Odyssey is nothing like Sex Criminals. Yeah. It's nothing like Hawkeye. It's its own thing on the shelf that Fraction's playing with.
To go on to that more, Fraction, it's not just that. Fraction has, this week alone had Casanova, Sex Criminals, Odyssey 2 about 2 weeks ago. So he's got 3 or 4 very, very, very different works coming out at the same time.
Right.
And like you just said, Dying of the Dead I love, but I love because it is dealing with very similar subjects that even his New Avengers work is dealing with for Hickman.
That's true, yeah. So, as I really feel like this is actually a point in Fraction's corner because, like I said, in our first bout, I feel like Fraction is uncomfortable with the boundaries put up by working with corporate characters that, of course, he doesn't have to deal with as an independent creator. I feel like Hickman works far better within those boundaries, and when he's working on his own creative, independently creative stuff, his own work, he tends to set boundaries for himself. So
I could tell you, I'm like I said, I'm a bit biased because Casanova is one of my all-time favorite series, and Sex Criminals has quickly become that. And I'm definitely not going to take anything from East of West or
right. Well, honestly, if I had to put one against the other, I would probably. For example, if I was calling a pullback, I would keep Sex Criminals over East of West. I would. I really enjoy coming back to that. A lot of that, though, is Chip Zdarsky. So you've got to take artists into this calculation as well. Yeah. And Fraction has an eye for artists that is really incomparable. You've got Christian Ward on Odyssey. You've got David Aja on Hawkeye. Zdarsky on Sex Criminals.
Fabio Moon and Gabriel Ball on Casanova.
Right, yeah.
But like you said, they are all so different in style that it does lead a lot to why his books feel different, is because each book, the world that not only he created, but the look of the world is vastly different from any other one he has.
Right. So I'm quite comfortable saying bout 2 in Fraction's favor.
Yeah.
How about yourself?
I'm 100%. Even though like I said, I loved East of West and I loved Dead and Dying. Oh crap! I let me look this up really quick. I have this written down, but because there's another Hickman work that I adore.
Nightly News.
I did like Nightly News, but it was crap. Why am I blanking on this one? It was I think it was a little bit after Nightly News, if I remember correctly.
Red Mass from Mars.
No. We're going in the right direction, but not quite. What the heck? I'm
just blurting out titles at this point.
Yeah, it was crap. Why am I blanking so much on this? I'm ashamed now because I have this written down on my phone. Is one time this stupid page of notes is not loading. Really quick, while I'm looking this, since they both wrote Fantastic Four, this is the wrong category. But while I'm looking this up, you already said who you liked better. Whose work do you think they're going to take more out of for the movie?
Well, as we talked about with the trailer is almost purely Ultimate Fantastic Four.
Very much so.
So I at a guess, probably Hickman's, because Hickman's definitely feels more science-based, where, again, a lot of Fraction's Fantastic Four was character-based, especially involving Reed, Sue, and the kids. And then he actually played with something that very few people do anymore, which is the Thing turning into Ben Grimm for one day a year. Yeah. So he was very character-oriented, and it feels like the character stuff is coming from Ultimate Fantastic Four, so I feel like the science stuff is going to come from Hickman.
Yeah. And that was perfect timing because Transhuman was a series I loved.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Okay, now we have that cleared up. I guess number 3, which does tie into it. Who has your favorite comic out of any of their work between them? Which one work between them would you put above all else?
And again, that is such a difficult question to answer, because for the longest time I was not a fan of Jonathan Hickman, so a lot of his work felt really cold and distant to me. So for him, it's really his Avengers work, his Fantastic Four work, and East of West versus, let's say, Sex Criminals, Iron Fist.
Hawkeye would probably have to be up there for
Hawkeye and Iron Man.
Yeah.
Because I really did adore, like I said, the first 2/3 of his Iron Man run really, really blew me away.
I'll play a little bit of devil advocate here because I know who's going to win for me. But for me, also what it comes down to is, of course, Casanova, but New Avengers, I don't know why, but what Hickman's done in that, I have loved so much, and I'm behind on it because I'm mostly reading in trades at this point.
Right.
That being said, though, he's taken characters that what any really good writer can do. He's taken characters that I didn't really care too much about and taken them in places that I now care about them and want to see where they go.
Right. And he also finally, gave T'Challa, the Black Panther, the respect and credit that he deserved within the Marvel Universe.
And then, once again, we keep alluding to the issue 5, but what some both these writers do is they, much like Morrison and a few others, they have this ability to take characters that no one else uses, and maybe that's why they're so good at them, but taking characters no one else uses and making you care about them. But yeah, so for me, my vote goes to Fraction purely for Casanova, because for me, what it really comes down to in one corner is Casanova and Sex Criminals versus East of West and New Avengers.
Right.
For me personally.
And see, as much as I appreciate Hickman's work in, the PowerPoint presentation that goes into creating the story that he creates, and I appreciate the mechanical precision, the Watchmaker's take on creating stories that he does, and how that fits within, like I said, the superhero context and within the boundaries of telling a superhero comic. I am at heart a character person. I love the characters. I love a good, character growth and progression. So I would actually have to give it to Fraction for Sex Criminals, and probably for Iron Fist, which again, just top 20 comic of the millennium for me.
No, I like I said, only reason I'm gonna put Iron Fist more up there is because I'm ashamed to say I have not finished reading the entire series.
Gotcha.
And I don't want to, like, for these fights, I want to do stuff that I have actually, enough knowledge of, so I don't go like, oh, I love the series, and then get to like the third act, like, well, that took a downer.
Right. I've remember that Dwayne took over at issue 18. He actually wrote issues 18 through 33 of Iron Fist. So you only have to read through issue 17 to get the Fraction run. Okay.
So I think I only have up to like issue 10 or something, so I'm not that far, but...
Good.
Yes.
It's worth finishing, dude.
I know. I just... for whatever reason, I find... What is it, the omnibus I found before, but I cannot find the trades anymore.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah.
And Marvel being Marvel is probably out of print. Have you considered getting a Marvel Unlimited subscription?
Yeah. that sounded very much like a Marvel commercial there.
I know. I was about to say, if you don't mind, I'm going to try to get a sponsorship for our podcast from Marvel by saying how much I love the Marvel Unlimited app.
Yes. No, I haven't gotten it yet. I have thought about it a few times, and I may, just for reasons like that, because there are certain... Marvel... so bad about keeping certain things in trade.
They really are, and the digital subscription is really quite wonderful. I actually wrote an article about it for Zeitgeeks when I first got it, because, dude, there's seriously like over 10,000 comics on that for $10 a month. You cannot read the depth and birth of Marvel Comics in 1 month. They're better about keeping newer stuff on there than older stuff, but there's a shit ton of older stuff. And just as an old school Marvel fan who really likes to dig into the 70s catalog for some reason, someone who's really nostalgic for the 70s, considering I was born in the 80s, it's well worth it. So / rant, end commercial, fade out on Smile. That would be the way I would suggest to do it, man. Nice.
Well, I'll look more into that. Back to the fighting, though, for that quick intermission. Would you mind looking at it, because our category 4 we've kind of covered in a lot of ways. Would you mind if I make a quick tweak to that?
Hit me.
Because like I said, issue 4 wasn't the best catalog, which I think is still a good question. I think we'll answer that after after the main fights are done as a bonus thing. But now we've talked this much, I think the question I more want to ask is, who creates the best worlds?
Oh, again, that is a very hard question to ask.
I know. Because
as much as I've kind of ragged on Hickman for being plot-centric, he has an imagination that really just won't quit.
I know, because this is what I just thought of, because I was looking at myself and I realized East of West has one of the best, like, completely new worlds I've seen in years.
Yeah, and that's my knee-jerk reaction is East of West kind of locks that category for me.
But at the same time, this sounds so dumb, and I guess thank you, Matt Fraction, for making me say this, but Cumworld in Sex Criminals,
also known as The Quiet.
Oh, true. I could have gone with that, but I'm not. I refuse to right now. that world is also very intriguing and such an interesting take and kind of the glue that holds sex criminals together in a very sticky way.
Well, will you allow me a quick digression?
Oh,
I really honestly think Cumworld works as well as it does more due to Chip Zdarsky. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I might actually say the same about the world of East of West, except I can't remember the artist's name, and I feel really terrible about
East
that.
Of West, he's got the Dragotta?
Yes, Nick Dragotta, yeah.
Yes.
So, that's one that I almost want to lay more at the feet of the artists than the writers. But then again, Fraction really does create the ballsy, weird, crazy characters for East of West. Whereas with the sex criminals, all we've really gotten are Jasmine St. Cocaine, the porn star, and the sex police.
And we've also, we're talking worlds. It's not quite his world, but New Avengers and a few of those other and his Fantastic Four, almost even though they were so important to the Marvel Universe, because especially New Avengers is set 2 years, or he's done 2 years in the future on a few issues and has done stuff. They feel so distant in their own works in a lot of ways that you could argue just the feel of that world was very much him on Hickman.
Right. And interesting. I feel it's kind of interesting that I'm going to bring this up, but Casanova definitely creates its own unique reality.
But I see what you
which
mean,
I think is probably the closest comparison to East of West is his work on Casanova as far as creating that environment and that reality.
See, I completely see what you mean, because that is such a pairing of the artist again, because Casanova, the only book I can think of that has a similar world is Umbrella Academy, which also happens to be drawn by Gabriel Ba.
Right.
But Casanova,
I guess if we're arguing who creates the best world, probably Gabriel Ba or Chip Zdarsky. But if we're talking who writes the most creative worlds, I have to give this one to Hickman. And then just once again point out that Fraction has an eye for artistic talent that is almost Jeff Lobian in scope.
I think we do have to give it to Hickman, because what you just said won me over, is that even if he picks up an artist, the fact that even if he's picking artists that don't work as well, he still has such not work as well sounds bad, but artists that aren't as perfect for the work. Well, that sounds
aren't as simpatico. I really feel like, Zdarsky on Sex Criminals, Ba on Casanova, even Aja on Iron Fist and Hawkeye. Yeah. Those are artists that are completely simpatico with the level of story he's trying to tell. Nick Dragotta is a fantastic artist, and he really sells the work of East of West. But even if he didn't, the ideas and concepts that Hickman is selling in East of West are unique and exciting, and another artist could potentially tell just as good or even better stories with those creations.
Thank you for saving me from that endless loop of insulting artists that I love, because like I said, no insult. We wouldn't. I'll clear this up right now. We wouldn't be talking about any of these books if we didn't love everyone involved.
Yes.
But I think it's got to Hickman for what you just said. Because if he can pull this off, a lot of his ideas, these stories work no matter who the artist is. It's just if he has the artist, it would come off perfect.
Right. Exactly.
I think Hickman's got to go for that one.
So I believe we are once again at 2-2, and that is not by design.
No, that is not at all.
Much like the Frank Miller versus Alan Moore, we did not. We honestly did not come into this one having a clear winner chosen.
No,
and we didn't pick the questions that we thought would balance one way or the other. This has just been it's an incredibly fun coincidence that Hickman for one, Fraction for two.
Fraction for three,
and Hickman for 4.
He's coming. He likes his wild cards apparently.
Yes.
5. We've been talking about this whole time, because once again, this is I think even more so a good one for the final big bout. Best at developing characters.
And I think the clear answer to this one, and the only one that when you texted me the questions, I had a clear answer for, is Fraction. Yeah. Fraction is very much a character-based writer, whereas Hickman is very much a plot-based writer. And again, all I had to do is point to John and Susie and Sex Criminals and their foibles and their complications and their realities, and sometimes you really hate John, and sometimes you really don't understand where he's coming from, and sometimes Susie's kind of a bitch, but you still love these characters and you want to see them grow and change. And this is one of those weird romance books where if Susie doesn't end up with John at the end, I'm okay, because I understand where she's coming from and I want her to be happy, but I also hope that John finds a way to work out his problems and becomes a better person and ultimately finds who he's supposed to be with if Susie isn't who he's supposed to be with. And if they end up together, that's just as exciting because these two people are clearly crazy about each other. So it's a book with so many possibilities. Like you said, versus East of West, which is a brilliantly designed world with a brilliantly constructed plot whose engine is just running towards this inescapable conclusion that I desperately want to see the end of. But death is death, and Mao's daughter is Mao's daughter, and they're these very clearly defined characters, but that's all they are. They're not growing. They're not changing. They are cogs in the machine driving the story. And I have been talking like an asshole, so I'm going to let you speak for a while.
No, it's fine. I find it's a good point. See, for me, this is all. Even though I just talk about mostly creator on work, for me, it comes more down to Hickman's work with Black Panther and everything there. In New Avengers, to what were they going to Fractions, what he did with Hawkeye mostly,
right?
Because these are characters that were not created by them and they were like you said, we've talked about earlier, handed the plate and they said, okay, do what you want to do with them, move them, but you're going to have to end up at this point. And those are the ones I think they have moved forward the most. But that being said, Fraction, even though Hickman, like we said earlier, added so much depth to a character that needed depth and a character that needed to be relevant, and a character that needed to be more important than he was. Fraction took a character that no one really completely cared about, and instead of going the easy route of just connecting to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, he made his own character and evolved that character to a point now where the comic, for better or worse, the comics Hawkeye, even though he has similarities, is so much more defined and such a better character than he is in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Well, and then look at it this way as well. The Hawkeye that Fraction wrote is not the Hawkeye that we'd seen in the 80s and 90s. Yeah. That is not a recognizable Hawkeye. But that's who Hawkeye is today. Whereas Hickman took what was there and brought it to the forefront. I mean, he kept writing. He wrote the character as the character had always intended to be written. It's just that it had been written by some sloppy writers. Versus Fraction recreated Hawkeye and
Iron Fist and
made them. He perfected those characters to the point where that became the character now. I mean, if you've read any Secret Avengers, that's Fraction's Hawkeye on that team. That is not the Hawkeye from Kurt Busiek's Avengers or the Hawkeye and Mockingbird miniseries by Jim McCann. That is... he's left an indelible mark on the character.
And I think... I think I do have to agree. I think I have to give this one to Fraction as well because of that reason alone is that I think Black Panther would have come and all the new Avengers characters would have still been around and been somewhat relevant in the Marvel Universe had Hickman not touched them. Mm-hmm. Where Hawkeye and Iron Fist may not have ever been cared about if Fraction and Aja had not done what they've done with those characters.
I agree.
So I think for this competition, we've got to go to Matt Fraction as the champion.
And honestly, like I said, I didn't have anyone picked out to win this, but I'm actually a little surprised. I thought I was going to lean more towards Hickman, but I feel like, for these categories, Fraction takes it.
Well, no, I would agree. Are there any categories that you'd like to go over that you think need diving into?
No, because I mean, you sent me this list about a week ago, and I looked at it and I thought that was a really strong list. And then it was even the question you actually came up with, the "Who creates a better world" was actually an even better question than the one you had, which I thought, and actually I feel was much fairer to the challenge as well. No, you laid this one out pretty beautifully, man.
Yeah, but yeah, once again, these are two writers that currently, if anyone is some reason listening to this podcast, not reading them, for one, that's really odd. Yeah. But two, they all their work. Something that I always look for in favorite writers, and I know you do too, is if their work, even if it's not good, if it's intriguing and keeps you at least wanting to see what's going to happen.
Right.
And all of their work, even their worst stuff, for some reason, they always seem to have this seed in there of, okay, there's something here that I do want to work.
What next?
Yeah.
What are they going to do next?
And once again, when they hit out of the park, whether it be East of West or Sex Criminals, when they do hit one out of the park, you better be there because it is always something shocking and incredible.
Right. And it's something to talk about, and it's something that will continue to be talked about.
And I'm so glad it happened this week because Dead and the Dying and the new Casanova, I really think could be that. It's still early on both to really tell. You can go back and listen to our other podcast that we did this week more about that.
Right.
But they are both they are both very self-contained stories that set up a world and plot that I'm looking forward to being part of.
Agreed. And I need to dig into more Casanova because I've heard nothing but good things, and what I have read was fantastic.
And they just re-released all the first 3 volumes for, I think they're like $25 each, something like that.
I think they're 30.
They may be 30.
They're oversized hardcovers too.
Yes,
so
they are. That's right.
They're not skimping on the production quality.
No, and I need to pick them up. My problem is no one here is getting them, and I may order them offline, but on stuff like that, I love going to a comic shop and just picking them up, and I wish someone here would get them because I would pick them up immediately if I walked into the shop and got them.
Yeah, I've seen them at Star, but I don't know if he's got any copies currently on hand. I don't think he did when I went in yesterday, so I'll have to keep my eyes open for him.
I don't know what it is. I know you know it too, but there's something so much more appealing about when you walk in a store and you're like, oh, there's that book I've been thinking about getting. I better get it. It's here. Yeah,
no, that's one of the best feelings in the world. Yeah. It also has that undercurrent of, oh, Jesus, I'm spending way more than I expected to. But, this is what I've been wanting, and there it is.
That was recently that's what happened with Southern Bastards, exactly. I was not planning on buying that. I knew I loved the issues I had read, but it was something I was putting off, and I walked in the store, and they had one copy, and I was like, okay, I'm going to get it.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've got a little off track, but for Comic Collisions, you guys really should email us because there's a few ideas we have had that we may do. I'd really like to expand more on this because I think it's a really fun idea.
I feel like the next one we do, I really kind of want to. I know both of us are definitely more writers. I consider you as a musician a writer, but I really feel like we should try artists.
I think we should too because it would be a very fun exercise and very fun because it brought this today's really. I was thinking the same thing because of how much we had to go back to. Well, how much the artists contribute to this, especially like the world question and a few of the field questions that how much they do add. And there are several artists I would love to go into on it. I'm trying to think of an obvious one right now, but I can't off the top of my head because I just keep going to my favorites.
Right, yeah, that's the other thing is we'd probably want to try to avoid the favorites that we can easily defend and look at the larger bodies. Like maybe since we did Alan Moore versus Frank Miller, maybe Dave Gibbons versus like Bill Sienkiewicz or Klaus Janson or someone.
Or Dave Gibbons versus Frank Miller.
If you wanted to go against Frank Miller purely on an art perspective, that would be a challenge. Like, challenge accepted, but definitely a challenge. And then also, I still think one of these I definitely want to do, but I want to wait until you have a little bit more experience with the creators, is definitely Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird versus David Sim.
Oh, yes. So what was the other? Well, crap, we had the good one for James O'Barr versus.
James O'Barr and Jonan Vasquez.
Yes, that one I still want to do. And we will still do Morrison and Moore. We will still do Gaiman and somebody. I'm trying to think of someone instead of Gaiman and Morrison, although that'd be fine.
Right, because Gaiman and Morrison's just... It'd be fun, but it'd be too easy, I feel like.
See, I don't know if it'd be too easy. I just don't know. I feel like it'd be a lot of me personally, at least going back and forth for hours.
And me, honestly, I love Gaiman. Gaiman was one of the first highfalutin comics writers I read. I think I read Gaiman before I read Morrison, but I am such a dyed-in-the-wool Morrison fanatic that I would just check every one of your points with Morrison points until you
I couldn't disagree with that because I love Morrison a ton. But then again, it's like if I had to pick someone else instead of Morrison, my go-to is like Morrison and Gaiman are the only, well, not the only two writers that have a giant body of work that if I see something on the shelf that I don't own, I will buy.
Yeah, no, I agree. Actually, maybe Garth Ennis. Speaking of people with giant bodies of work.
Yeah, that's not a wow. There we go. So we have these conversations. That's not bad at all.
Cool. Well, that is one to consider then, because I think a Gaiman versus Ennis would be an incredible collision.
That really would be. And there's a few others I've thought about, like Gillen versus Jason Aaron versus Kieran Gillen.
Ooh, that would be fun.
Yeah, that'd be another kind of like this one, another more modern, kind of the modern day champions to see who would go.
And two people who have really made their mark both in the Big Two field and the independent field.
I feel like kind of like today came down to Sex Criminals versus East to West for so many, and that's a very Weekend Divine versus Southern Bastards.
Yeah.
Which is just as hard and just as frustrating to think about.
Right, exactly.
But yeah, really, guys, we can't stress enough. Email us your questions. Because we would love, or even if we do like a book versus book, would be an interesting fight.
Absolutely, yeah. Anything you guys want to hear us argue about, we are more than happy to politely and cordially argue about.
Yeah, just don't make, my only request, don't make it the most obvious things in the world. Nothing against that, but don't come at us with like Sandman versus Watchmen or something like that.
Right.
Or a better example, Sandman versus Invisibles. Although I say that out loud now. And that would be a very hard fight, almost impossible fight. But
that would be a lot of fun.
That's not a horrible idea. Crap. Never mind. Come at us with the obvious.
Yeah. Come at us with obvious. We can find an angle. We'll find an angle on it.
Yeah. Like we said, the only rule is no Warren Ellis versus Gerard Way. That's pretty much the only rules. As I said in the first one, that's it. That would be going below the belt. Yeah, I think this is another comic collisions in the bank here.
Yes, sir.
We need to make a bracket eventually and have just the fighters go on.
Yeah, we need to do like a Final Four or something.
Yeah, just keep on going. We get more. When we get 8 fights, and we'll go down to 4 and go down 2. We'll get this. So right now our champions, we got more. We got Fraction.
Hell yeah!
That's right there, an interesting fight.
Already, that is an interesting fight. I mean, it's interesting in the fact that Fraction would get creamed, but it'd be an interesting fight.
Yeah. It's Moore may have a few bigger tricks up her sleeve, but that's a little interesting. That could, we don't know. That's the beauty of comics. Fraction could very easily release something that will be the next groundbreaking thing by the time we get to that. Which would be incredible if he releases something bigger than Watchmen in the next 6 months.
That would be hilarious.
That would be.
I mean, I'm not discounting it as an impossibility, but that is definitely.
I so hope that happens now. Just so when we get this bracket going, and that match comes, like, well, 6 months ago, Moore would have creamed him until Fraction dropped this.
Yeah.
It's like now nothing else matters.
Until Fraction completely re-altered the comics landscape with the Annotated Mantooth Volume 2. Yes,
dude, it'll come eventually. I like your idea that a Volume 2 is going to be the thing to change everything. Also,
yes.
Like Volume 1, you don't have to read, but Volume 2,
that completely rewrote how comics are being produced today.
Ralph Albuquerque versus Greg Capullo.
Oh, that'd be doable.
Yes.
Man, I'd have to sit down. I kind of want to do. Chip Zdarsky versus Mike Allred.
Ooh,
that's right.
We could totally do that too.
Fuck yeah!
Here we go. Okay, guys, just tell us which one of these. We've said a lot of ideas there. we just cast the next season.
So yeah, why don't you guys?
Yeah, I don't know if we need ideas anymore. We got the next season planned out apparently.
Or let us know which one of these you're most excited about. Let us know which one of these you want to hear. If you don't feel comfortable coming up with. I don't want to say if you don't feel comfortable coming up with something on your own, but if you don't feel comfortable emailing us ideas, just tell us which one of these that we just blattered out that you'd like to hear us do. And the place to do that would be blahblahpodcast@gmail.com if you want to email us. I'm also pretty frequently on Twitter. I am at Voodoo Ben.
I'm at Hellhound F5.
And this has been another Comics Collision and another Blah Blah Comics Blah Blah Curse Words.
Yes, it has.
And on that note,
that awkward silence. Now we can end it properly with the awkward silence. We won't have an outro for this one. We're just gonna end awkwardly. So that's it.